Grand Theft Auto becomes a reality in Canada. I'm Marco Perry. Welcome to the Perry Platform. The CBC reports that auto theft is now considered a national crisis in Canada, with nearly all stolen cars being exported by organized crime. Here's some data. In 2021, there were just over 27,000 vehicles stolen from Ontario alone. That's a car stolen every 17 minutes in that year, according to the article. That's too much. In 2022, Ontario's crime, in terms of carjackings, actually grew by 48.3%. So if you thought that a car stolen every 17 minutes was bad, it got worse the year after. In Quebec, it was up by 50%. In Alberta, it was up by 18.3%. In Atlantic Canada, it was up by 34.5%. Carjackings and crime are increasing at rapid rates right now. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? Well, you can turn to the idiotic policies our government and judiciary system have been implementing. This soft on crime stance has resulted in pretty obvious consequences. In fact, it's so bad that there are more cars stolen in Canada than there are in America. And keep in mind, Canada is roughly 1/10 the population of the USA. Roughly 1/10 the amount of car supply available, just based on population figures. And yet, there are more stolen here. That tells you a lot. It highlights just how grave the scenario is. We become the hotspot for getting your car stolen. Sticking with the year 2022, police and insurers said there was a never-before-seen $1 billion worth of cars that were stolen in that year alone. As a result, insurance companies are warning that they might have to attach higher premiums onto the most targeted vehicles. And if you own one of those, well, you're out of luck. Combine that with the cost of living crisis that we're facing, things could get very expensive for you. Stolen cars are often crammed into shipping containers after they've been stolen. Then they're moved by truck or train, often to the port of Montreal, and then loaded onto ships to be sent around the world. Now, the thing that's crazy to me is we actually know where they're being sent from. The article clearly cites the data. The port of Montreal is the hotspot where these cars are being shipped out from. So, we know the problem. Cars are being jacked and exported. We know where they're being sent from, but yet, the crime continues to go on. Tell me, how does that make any sense? Why aren't police forces in the Port of Montreal setting up heightened surveillance and checking any containers that look like they might have vehicles on them? It's not like we don't weigh these things or inspect them before taking off, but for some reason, cars seem to be able to slip through like nothing. Perhaps that's because of some corruption or insider sources, but either way, the failing of policing in this regard is out of this world. You have many of the case facts presented to you, but the action is lacking. Now, just so you're aware, there are 3 methods that thieves are using currently to steal cars. The first is what's called a relay attack, which involves capturing the signal of a key fob. So many modern cars don't have true keys anymore. They use a key fob similar to what you would use to enter your hotel room, and they rely on signals. So they steal that signal, replicate it, enter your vehicle, and take it away. Then there is something called an onboard diagnostic port, typically used by a mechanic to connect a computer, and then from there they can diagnose any problems with your vehicle. But they're using that access point to inject programs into your vehicle that make it develop a new key that they're able to use to take it from that point. And the latest method, according to the article, involves the controller area network, which acts similar to a nervous system for vehicles, enabling communication between various components. Thieves connect to one of the various nodes from there, and then it's a simple task to command the vehicle to unlock and the engine to start. Aside from the obvious fact of you losing your vehicle, there are many other consequences that we have to account for. The first is the erosion of trust in police and judicial systems. It's become very clear that Canada is going down a very far left path when it comes to handling crime. Now, we're not quite as bad as San Francisco and LA just yet, where DAs are refusing to prosecute any petty theft, which they define as something under $500. And as a result, everyone is shoplifting and stores are having to shut down. That's not the reality in Canada at this point, but it's very clear that we are soft on crime. And as a result, criminals are taking this as an opportunity to become more bold, and as a result, crime rates are going up. Obviously. I've heard from people who've contacted the police after getting their car stolen, and they have video footage and all of these things, but the police turn around and say, "I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do about it." How exactly is that an acceptable response? Now, the insurance company also has a take on that. Well, if the police are now recovering these vehicles, if crime continues to grow in Canada, we can't afford to insure you at previous rates. So premiums are going to go up. So this approach to crime is costly not only societally, but in terms of your wallet. So what's going to happen as a result? Well, when you have situations like this, typically people turn to vigilante justice. If they feel the government, if they feel the police, if they feel the justice system is not getting the job done, they're going to take matters into their own hands, and that's a bad thing. We don't want armed civilians. We don't want civilians on edge, so much so that when an individual passes by their car, they're attacking them. We're simply asking for paranoia and a boom in civilian-to-civilian violence if we go down this path. People have to feel like the police and the justice system are going to be looking out for their interests. And when crime continues to increase year over year, when we know where these vehicles are being exported from, when we understand the situation, and yet police can do nothing to stop it, that's not going to inspire confidence. There are a couple obvious next steps here. First, we have to carry out better port inspections. We also have to be a little bit smarter when it comes to doing things like active policing. You can't be reactionary with crimes like this. Apparently, organized crime units are the ones who are carrying out the bulk of the auto theft. They're professionals. If you're responding to calls showing up and saying you can't do anything, they're always going to be winning, the criminals. You have to find a way to infiltrate, find a way to track, find a way to be active in communities that are most likely to be hit. If you know the types of vehicles that they're stealing most often, identify where those are in certain neighborhoods and keep an eye out. Have police units stationed near highway exits so they can respond quickly when a call comes in for a stolen vehicle. And further, we need serious sentencing, and we need the Crown to actually pursue these sentences. It's one thing if on the law books we say these crimes can get you up to 15 to 20 years in jail, but if our Crown prosecutors do not actually prosecute, that doesn't mean anything. If people are let off on bail, which we often see with violent criminals, and they're free to continue committing crimes, that's not going to do anything for society. If you're taking in irrelevant facts of an individual into the case, and as a result, sentencing them lighter, that's also a detriment. We can't continue to operate like this. We've tried this test for some time now, and things have gotten worse. When in Canada did we think it'd be a great idea for the justice system to prioritize criminals over society and innocent people who are being victimized? Because that seems to be where the polls are shifting towards. Even outside the realm of carjacking, look at violent crime, especially in large cities like Toronto. How many of those incidents are a direct result of our judicial system not doing its job correctly? I'd say maybe even the majority there. There's a lot of repeat offenders. And there's even another thing to consider, which is cars themselves not being so secure. What are the manufacturers of these vehicles doing? Ever since we made the switch to key fobs and non-real keys, it's become easier to steal your car, not harder. Perhaps the vehicle manufacturers themselves have to take a deep look at security and implement measures to make this less likely to happen. Now, of course, they might not be so motivated, and we know that's not the key reason for the carjackings because we have some data about the American rates of incidents. Canada has more carjackings despite being only 1/10 of the population. So car manufacturers look at that and say, obviously, it's a cultural issue. It's related to your country, Canada. Why doesn't America have similar rates, even with the same vehicles? And that'll be hard to respond to. As a country, we have some reflecting to do in terms of how we handle crime. Now, with that, it does bring us to the end of our conversation for today. If you enjoyed the material, be sure to leave a review and share. They'll help us grow. And you can find me online at perryplatform.org and on social media at perryplatform. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you soon.